Well, good morning, good morning. My name is Daniel, and we are going to go live today. We should be good from a technology standpoint. Looks like my microphone is working as planned, and the camera seems to be working as planned. Hey, Dawn, I see some comments for some people that are already in. Nestfield, hello, hello. Chad, nice to see you guys. Been on vacation for a month, Chad. I love it. I love it. As you can tell, I'm keeping my eye on the chat box. And, if there's a question that pops up, happy to answer your questions. Hey, Renee, Alex, good morning, good afternoon for some of you, depending on where you are in the world. Glad to be here. We're scheduled to start right now, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. This is the view from my vantage point. For those of you that I have not had the opportunity to meet before, my name is Daniel, and I am with VantagePoint AI. And we're going to take some time today and do some analysis on the markets, understand what's been going on with the Nasdaq, the Dow, the S&P. We'll check out the indices, light sweet crude oil. We'll do a deep dive from several different perspectives. This is a big week from a market standpoint. Obviously, there's been a lot of earnings information. There's been a lot of information related to real estate. If the Feds will have some announcements, interviews going on Friday. So there's a lot of stuff going on this week. Oil production, there's just a lot of things going on in the market, creating a lot of volatility, uncertainty. I think there's even a little bit of hope in the air about a market reversal and things turning bullish again in the short term. So we've got a lot to discuss. We'll dig into the details and make sure that, if there's any questions that come out from our analysis, that we can get those questions answered. This session, in case you're wondering, this session is designed to be a live session, as interactive as possible. One of the things we want to make sure we're doing is answering questions on the fly if we need to, but also giving you information as we see it. Nothing that I'm going over today is trading advice, purely education. And you have to remember, trading is hard, right? Trading involves risk. You shouldn't be trading with money you can't afford to lose. That's why they call it risk capital. There is no perfect solution. What we're doing here in this session is educating you on what we're seeing in the markets and providing you insight, education from what we see related to VantagePoint software. I use VantagePoint software. For those of you that don't know, VantagePoint deploys artificial intelligence, generative AI, and neural network processes to predict where the markets, individual stocks are expected to go over the next few days. So that's where I'm going to do all my analysis today as we dig into the details. Looks like we've got a lot of people joining into the session now, so I think we're about ready to start doing some analysis. A couple of things to think about. The Treasury yield has some people scared. It's at a 16-year high at 4.35%. Housing market month over month from June to July saw less previously owned homes for sale. So that could have an impact on the real estate market. So a lot of different things going on, a lot of chatter around earnings and so many different things out there. I'm going to dive into the VantagePoint software, and I want to start out, actually let me change my screen here, because I want to start out by showing you what we're seeing from an overall market standpoint. And I want to start with the strongest of the indices, if I can say it that way, right? The strongest of the indices being the Nasdaq. So if you look at my screen right now, you should be able to see right here where we're looking at the Nasdaq. I'm going to go grab a quick pen just so that everybody can see where I'm drawing. Here we go. So we're looking at the E-mini Nasdaq, and you can see we're looking at the current contract month. For those of you that are futures traders, this is probably information that you look at on a regular basis. And what we're looking at here right now on the screen is a default version that I use in VantagePoint. It's got some predictive indicators. And for those of you that are part of the VantagePoint family, hopefully understand there's people on today's live session, as every live session, that don't use the VantagePoint software. So I want to dig into the details from the very beginning so that we can all understand what the analysis is saying, right? And if you have questions, by all means, please feel free to hop in to the chat. I got my eye on it, and I got my team on it. So if there's anything that pops up, we're happy to to answer those questions. All right, so we're looking at the E-mini Nasdaq, and what the first thing that I want to notice here, the first thing that I see, is if I look on the right-hand side of the screen, what I get in the VantagePoint software are the predictions of the Nasdaq. Now, this information updates every night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. So those of you that don't use the software or don't use this analysis, understand this is all available and came out at 6:30 last night, so everybody knew what to expect from the markets today. Those of you that are using the VantagePoint software. For those of you that aren't using the VantagePoint software, let me show you what I mean. We're looking at the fact that there is a blue line here that is below the gray line. That blue line, the fact that it's below, creates this shaded red area in between those lines. This is VantagePoint's artificial intelligence doing analysis and predicting that this trend on the Nasdaq is expected to continue going down. Now, there's always up days and down trends and down days and up trends. We know how the markets work. So I'm not saying that that's not a possibility, but what VantagePoint was saying at 6:30 last night, if you look over here, is that although this trend is expected to continue lower because the blue line is below the gray line and the shaded area is red, take a look at the move of this blue line. Now, what I'm looking at is a 2-day prediction that came out at 6:30 last night about the trend. And this is saying that there is some consolidation in this trend. As a matter of fact, that blue line is almost exactly where it was 2 days ago. That indicates that in this bearish down move, we can expect some consolidation in the trend. Well, if a trend is moving south, if a trend is moving down, what is consolidation? That would be sideways to slightly bullish, right? We can see some consolidation there. What VantagePoint is saying is that there's a predicted high and a predicted low right here. This gray bar is saying that we can expect a higher high on the Nasdaq today than yesterday and a higher low on the Nasdaq today than yesterday because we have that predicted range. And if I put my cursor on that predicted range, we see we've got a predicted high of 15,077.65 and a low of 14,876.04. So if you take a step back and you think about that and you say, all right, if that is what VantagePoint is indicating for the Nasdaq, then although this trend is still moving lower, there is consolidation in the trends, meaning slightly sideways to bullish, and the predicted high and predicted low are higher. I could see prices higher today before and this is not a trend reversing indication, this is consolidation in the Nasdaq. Now we know tech started out the week strong yesterday. We know there's been a lot of discussion around the fact that tech has been beat up for several weeks. VantagePoint indicated the reversal in tech several weeks ago, heck, almost a month ago in the end of last month. But you can see that it's been weak and going down ever since with some isolated consolidation moments in here like we're experiencing right now. Nothing surprising about what we're seeing from a market standpoint. Hey Renee, I just saw your comment. Renee said I come to cheat off of your analysis. I guess it's not cheating. You've got the technology yourself. Nice to see you again, by the way. I'm glad you're here. Hey Bridget. All right, so let's keep on doing some analysis on this. So what we're seeing is consolidation in the trend with short-term bullishness in the predicted price. But check this out. This little green box down here, this is called the predicted neural index, and it's telling us that there is short-term strength expected in the Nasdaq. Short-term strength meaning we've got 1-day strength, meaning prices are expected to be higher overall from an average price standpoint today than what we saw yesterday, right? And again, going into the open market today, we had this information. Also, we can see that there's been a turnaround in the VantagePoint momentum indicators. The predictive differences here have gone down and created a bottom and then turned up. And we can see that's the case where momentum has shifted a bit. This doesn't necessarily mean that there is bullish momentum just because there is 1 day of bullishness here. Remember, this trend has been going from back here. So if we want to do some deep analysis on this, let's drop a line at the beginning of this downtrend right here. And then we can do some analysis on this oscillator to say, has this created higher lows or higher highs yet? And the answer to that is no. It's got some short-term strength, but until it starts to create some higher lows or higher highs, I don't have overall bullishness in the momentum, just short-term bullishness. Now, these three lines here that we're seeing are short, medium, and long-term momentum indicators. And the light blue one is short-term. That's 1 day predicted momentum. The medium term is this hot pink line, and that is 2 days of predicted momentum. And then the navy blue one, the long-term difference, is plus 3 days of predicted momentum. So when we stop and we look at this, we can see that all of them are trying to create some bullish momentum. There's not enough there to call it bullish, but it's certainly consolidating. You can see that that moment right here, look, this line from yesterday is right just under where it was 3 or 4 days ago. So we don't have bullish momentum yet, but certainly consolidation. Overall, from a trend standpoint, you can see from the beginning of this trend, where my white line is, if I was to trace each one of these, right, I could see I've got a little bit of consolidation going on. Bearishness on the 2 day, bearishness on the 3 day, a little bit of consolidation to bullishness on the 1 day. That's valuable information because that 1 day is talking about today, right? And that's the power in the artificial intelligence here, is I can see that there is some short-term bullishness going on, but not necessarily enough to overall reverse the trend, right? At least the artificial intelligence hasn't indicated that. And I'm just reading the AI here. Even if I go to the 1 day trend predictor, because I do have the ability to switch that, I can see I've got some major consolidation. I've got some bullishness. You can see those lines are basically touching each other right here. If I go to the long-term crossover on this, you can see that there's still consolidation here. This line is moving sideways. It's not pushing higher, but it's certainly moving sideways. Now I want to show you something really quickly, and I started today's session talking about I want to go and look at the strongest indices, and then we'll look at the weakest indices, starting with the Nasdaq. Well, the order that I'm looking at from strongest to weakness at this point, based on the VantagePoint predictions, is the Nasdaq, and then the S&P a little weaker, and then the Dow is the weakest. So if you just take a look really quickly at the right-hand side of the screen, right here, you can see that this is the medium-term crossover. This line is pointed up slightly, all right? With this line pointed up slightly, I'm going to switch the chart. Let me erase that line and just put an arrow to say, look where that blue line is. I'm going to switch the chart, and I'm going to go to the S&P. Same exact indicator, but notice that this line is not pushed up. Look, let me go back to the Nasdaq. You see the Nasdaq, that line is pushed up, and this is the power in understanding how to read an oscillator, especially when it's a predicted moving average, like we're talking about in the VantagePoint software. The Nasdaq, although still in a bearish trend, still expecting overall bearishness to consolidation. The 2 day predicted moving average has a little bullish tail on it, if you will. Well, the S&P has somewhat of a sideways, still a little bit bearish tail on it. Look at the Dow. I'm going to switch to the Dow now. Look at that. That line is pointed down. So this automatically gives me information to know I'd be expecting the Dow to be weaker today than the S&P to be stronger than the Dow, but weaker than the Nasdaq. And I got all of that by looking at the shape of that predicted moving average across all three indices. Now, remember, this isn't just being drawn on this chart because of what's happening in the Nasdaq or the S&P and the Dow. For those of you that utilize the VantagePoint software, you know behind the scenes there's an incredible amount of what we call intermarket analysis going on. That's that patented process that's utilized to generate these predictive indicators. It's literally looking at the Nasdaq, the Dow, it's looking at stocks, it's looking at other markets, it's looking at currencies around the world. The artificial intelligence is doing a deep dive because we know that markets are global and interconnected. Well, if we know that the markets are global and interconnected, and we know that the artificial intelligence is capable of processing all of that data, what we've got to get good at is interpreting what those indicators are saying, because they are predictive, they are forecasting information. And what I'm doing here is interpreting the shape of that line. Again, here's the Nasdaq, a little bit stronger than the S&P, which is a little bit stronger than the Dow, by analyzing just the shape of the end of that line. And by the way, this analysis you can do on any oscillator. You don't have to just do it in VantagePoint. Why am I doing it in VantagePoint? Because that line is predictive. There's predictive data in the formula. And that's the real difference maker. So just want to take a second to show you that so that we can dig into even more analysis by looking at the Nasdaq, because that's just one level or one kind of analysis. We've done some momentum analysis. We've done some analysis on strength, some analysis on trend, predicted trading range. I want to go a little bit further. I want to do some support and resistance analysis. And what I put on the screen right now, and some of you may have these indicators, some of you may not, I utilize support and resistance as often as I can, whether I'm visualizing the lines or using VantagePoint to draw it, because we're doing such a deep dive today in today's sessions. I'm going to use the VantagePoint verified support and resistance indicator to draw them for me so I don't have to think about it. I have the line marked on the E-mini Nasdaq here from the beginning of this bearish trend. But I want you to see something. Prices fell into this verified support zone and have stayed in here and have just gone down, down, down until this second zone. This is zone 1, this is zone 2, by the way, and you know it because zone 1 is a lighter green and zone 2 is a darker green. By the way, the lighter green is indicating a support zone I've got to be aware of. The darker green means it's a little bit more opaque. It's going to be stronger. It's been in effect for longer. The longer a support zone has been in effect and not broken, the stronger it is. The more it could create a pause for price. All right. So what we're seeing here is that as prices get lower and lower and closer to that verified support zone, and you can see it's already broken one support level here, it's broken a support level here, so it's moved through multiple support levels, right, deeper into that first zone, and you can see that it is this little doji candle right here, this far away from the zone, is telling me that there is some short-term consolidation expected. Now, why I wanted to show you this is not because of the obvious, short-term strength that we're seeing, but the question comes into play, how much strength can we see? Look at this. VantagePoint has drawn a red verified resistance zone right here on the chart. I'm kind of coloring it in with my markers so you can see. Well, let's call that 15,300, right? If we call that 15,300, what that means is as the NQ, right, could build some strength, for it to get past 15,300, it's going to need some really strong momentum when it encounters that level. Now, we don't have really strong momentum. I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that. There is momentum shifting, and I'll get into what that means to me in a second. But with momentum shifting, as prices work their way up to 15,300, I've got to really inspect volume and momentum of the Nasdaq to understand whether or not it could break back above that, reversing this trend completely. Right now, the artificial intelligence isn't telling me that, but I'm putting out some price levels to be aware of. In addition to that 15,300, I'm going to put on a line called the triple cross. That triple cross is 3 predicted moving averages layered on top of each other, and it creates this predicted moving average ribbon, if you will. And when it is red, we've got total bearishness in there. If it was to turn a little bit yellow, that would indicate some consolidation, right? But more importantly, this triple cross level, this navy blue line right here. And for those of you that don't have the VantagePoint software, I apologize if I'm naming indicators that you've never heard of before. But if you do have questions and want to dig into some of that, go to VantagePointForecast.com. If you go to VantagePoint Forecast, it's in the chat. I think you can even click on it in the chat. You can, reach out to us. We'll be glad to answer your questions if this isn't a tool that you're familiar with using. But what I'm showing you here is the fact that not only do we have a 15,300 resistance level that I've got to be aware of, I've got a 15,200 resistance level that I want to make sure that I keep an eye on. If prices get up to 15,200, I've got to really take a look at what the momentum is doing to understand if the predicted momentum is expecting price to go past those two levels. Again, that's 15,200 and 15,300 are the two levels that I'm keeping an eye on based on the VantagePoint predictive indicators. All right. All right, good. Let me go back and and if I'm talking about support and resistance, then I've got to think about momentum indicators. And the momentum indicators that I think about are the VantagePoint predicted MACD, RSI, stochastic, percent R. I can go into several predicted momentum indicators and see that from the beginning of this trend to now, I certainly don't have overall bullish momentum. I still have bearish momentum because it's creating lower highs, but I have that little consolidated tail on the end of my predicted MACD. Now, why am I calling this predicted MACD? And that's because VantagePoint creates indicators using that artificial intelligence output. See, the artificial intelligence generates predicted price. That predicted price is then utilized to create forward-looking forecasted indicators. And in this case, MACD, and that's all patented, by the way. This case, MACD has a little consolidation going on, and I can zoom in if you want me to make it a little bit easier for you to see it. But if you can see the MACD right there has a little consolidation going on. We've got a little bit of bullishness in the predicted stochastic because that percent K line has come above the percent D. It's a little faster moving momentum indicator. We do have, in this case, a tail on the RSI that's coming out of oversold territory. But remember, from the beginning of this trend till now, it's in the same exact spot. Right? So we don't have bullish momentum. We have a shift on RSI. Got to keep an eye on the fact that from where this trend started to where it is now, it's slightly higher or virtually in the same spot where percent R is giving me bullish momentum. Here's the beginning of percent R, and here it is now coming out of that oversold territory. You know, it's percent R is sitting at a level that indicates bullishness. So we're starting to see the momentum shift. Just so you understand what I mean when I say that, this doesn't mean that we've got bullish momentum happening on the Nasdaq. This means we have, because these are all predicting one day. This means that we have some short-term bullishness in this downtrend. So what does that mean? What does that mean for you? That means you could see a green candle today. We see that with the predicted high and predicted low, which we're seeing so far. We're seeing exactly what VantagePoint's indicating. We could see a short pullback in this bearish trend. If those of you are out there that like to short sell the NQ, or maybe you're buying puts on the Qs or something like that, you'd be looking at this and expecting bullishness today on the NQ or on the Qs, and keeping an eye on this for a trend reversal in the near future. And that's one of the key things of this, is that there's a few key problems that I know a lot of people have problems with, and that is finding better entries, right? Finding better exits. We end up holding on too long to losers or winners, and they turn around on us, right? Knowing good opportunities versus mediocre ones. And you can see from these indicators, the NQ, from a bearish trend standpoint, even to where it is right now, if I took it to where it was right now and said, you know what? That's still a gain on the underlying asset of 2.43%. Just one contract of the Qs to the short side to where the NQ is right now from the beginning of the VantagePoint forecast has generated hypothetical gains of $7,500 per contract to the short side. That's even with what's already happened so far. Well, the question comes into, what are my risk parameters? What does my trade plan say? If I'm shorting the NQ and I've got a gain like that, have I already hit my target? Have I already taken that position off? Where do I set my stop losses? And in this case, VantagePoint has a predicted high of 15,077. You can see that right here. Predicted high of 15,077, which means if I'm short this opportunity and I'm making gains, if for some reason the market goes outside of that, that was unexpected, and I can use that as a stop loss level. How far outside? That's up to you. That's up to your risk tolerances. Maybe you like 20%, maybe you like 30%. Whatever the case is, if for some reason it goes outside or goes above what VantagePoint predicted for a high today, then that is outside what it was expected from the artificial intelligence doing global market analysis. So ask yourself, if the AI is saying prices are expected to be this high and prices go this high, the AI is more powerful than, heck, all of us put together and analyzing information. That's pretty powerful information that I've got to consider in this case. And then if we go to the S&P, same situation on the S&P, but not quite as much strength to the bullish side. as we were talking about a second ago. We are seeing some bullishness in the S&P. There's no question about that from a momentum standpoint, but not from a trend standpoint. Without trend, without strength in that trend, momentum is valuable to push things higher. But remember, there's always buyers, there's always sellers, right? Just because momentum is shifting from bearish to bullish momentum doesn't mean it's shifted and now that market is expected to be bullish. And that's what happens a lot of times, is we get excited as traders and we think, okay, the shift is on, things are happening, I'm going to go. And what the artificial intelligence is saying in this case is that there is still bearishness left in this bearish trend. How do I know that? Well, the shaded area between those lines is red. I don't have to overthink it. The AI has done the analysis, right? I can see the predicted high and the predicted low here. The predicted low is pretty much where the open was yesterday, right? If I do the same type of thing that I just did, I'm gonna do it very quickly. I'm gonna drop a line right here on this crossover, and I'm gonna draw some lines from where the dark blue line was to where it is now, from where the pink line was. Oop, I moved it. All right, let's try that again. There you go, to where it is now, pointed down. And I'm just doing this informally, where the blue line, I've done it twice now, where the blue line is to what, so I've got my 2-day and my 3-day saying bearish momentum, and my 1-day saying slightly bullish momentum from the beginning of this trend to now. You can see that. Okay, well, guess what? That is not as bullish as we were seeing on the Nasdaq. So we'd expect the S&P so far to still be down, even though there's a little bit of shift going on in the momentum, because most of the things are bearish. Look, MACD, RSI, stochastic, percent R. I'm just going to throw in a couple of these so that you can see what I'm talking about. Right? MACD is weaker than what we saw on the NQ. We can see stochastic has crossed bullishly as well, but we can see RSI is weaker. That's a lower high still happening. We can see percent R hasn't come out of oversold territory yet, weaker than what we saw on the NQ. And this, by the way, this is the real benefit to doing analysis like this, to understanding what the overall market is saying. I like to do an overall market overview, if you will. Don't worry, we'll take a look at some of those. Yep, small balances, William. Gene Pay says, what's moving up? We'll get there. We'll get there. Right? Good. All right, so let's keep on going through this. Let's keep on going through this. What we see here. Bradley and Rosemary say there's so much hype around NVIDIA's earnings call for a moonshot stock on August 23rd. What is it? Well, August 23rd update information will come out tonight. We'll take a look at NVIDIA. Happy to in a little bit. But first, let's finish our analysis on the overall markets, because what we're seeing here is that the NQ still bearish, but short bounce, a little bit of strength. S&P bearishness, consolidation. You know, we're seeing things move sideways. Remember, a little bit of bearishness from the close is still a consolidated market and right within VantagePoint's predicted high and predicted low. You can see that right there on the screen. VantagePoint's predicted low is saying 43.80 and predicted high is saying 44.35. So we could see that right in between the two. There's really no question about where we would see that go. If I put support and resistance on this, watch this. This is the real value in having support and resistance on here. We've got this level up here at 45, right? If we're writing down levels or thinking about levels, we've got a resistance level pushing into that support level at 4,500. If I put on my triple cross, which is that indicator that can help me understand some short-term resistance, if prices, look at this, if prices can't break the triple cross, which failed, that tells you there is certain bearishness in this, and prices right now have some room to that triple cross level. So we're still overall bearish, but we could see a little bit of bullishness up to that T-cross long, or that dark blue line, which is 44.73. So I've got a 44.73 level. I've got a 45 level saying that there's resistance up here, and then I also have a 45.5 level up here. So I've got several resistance points pushing down on the S&P, and those resistance points are closer to the close on the than what we saw on the Nasdaq. So more bearishness expected from the S&P 500. I think it started out high, started out moving up, and then it's peeled back since then. And all of that was expected because you can see VantagePoint indicated a potential high on the S&P of 44.35. The high on the S&P today was 44.40, so it was 5 points. 5 points off of the high, and you had that information at 6:30 last night. So there was no question around what to expect on the S&P, a little bit of a bullishness based on the short-term momentum that's happening, but nothing sustainable because of what's going on in the trend. And that's expected to continue for a couple of days. And then from the Dow standpoint, and again, we're back to the stock version. We're back to the default right out of the box version so that everybody can take a look and see that there is certain bearishness going on in the Dow, right? We see, look, the neural index on the Dow didn't turn green. Remember, look, let's go back to the S&P. S&P has this green end on the neural index. The Dow does not, right? It's got a slightly higher predicted high and a slightly higher predicted low. But again, if we think about the S&P, those were higher than that. If we go to the Nasdaq, they were way higher than that. So we can see that the Dow is the weakest of the indices based on what the VantagePoint software is indicating. Just no question about it. If we do the same type of thing where we mark, a line on the beginning of that downtrend, right when that forecast came out on August 3rd, and we did some analysis on our other momentum indicators, the one that was more bullish in the other lines was the blue one. Take a look at it here. We're almost dead sideways. There's a little bit of bullishness to it, but not as much. So no matter what, I can go through my full sequence. I can check out my support and resistance. Look at this. The resistance levels on the Dow are way up here, right? This is just falling with no resistance pushing it down. That shows you how weak the Dow is at this point. Now, we do have our other momentum indicators, but we've got a lot of room to the next support level. So this is the close yesterday. We've got all this room until price can get down to that next support level. You can see from the wicks, these shadows right here on the candles, that price is trying to stabilize. We've got a basis for price right here. What is causing that basis for price? Well, take a look. You can draw that line and look back and see that you've got candle top, candle top, candle top. So you've got some old price points back here that are causing the Dow to kind of pause where it is. But the artificial intelligence is saying, hey, there's overall bearishness still left in this, and things are expected to move lower. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go through and put on my momentum indicators that we were looking at before. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Let me zoom in a little bit. Stochastics had crossed over bullishly on the Nasdaq and the S&P. It has not. This is a predicted stochastics. It hasn't. On this, MACD is bearish, TSI, RSI. Matter of fact, all of these indicators are bearish on the Dow, where we had some shifting bullishly on the S&P and more shifting bullishly on the Nasdaq. Nothing is shifting on the Dow. So all in all, by doing this overall analysis, and this is in-depth analysis using predictive indicators, we can see that we're expecting overall bearishness in the market today. Tomorrow, the Nasdaq, the tech stocks have some short-term bounce in them, but overall sustainability right now, not based on what VantagePoint artificial intelligence is saying. And by the way, just a reminder, just in case anybody signed in late, I'm not providing trading advice. I'm doing live analysis in the VantagePoint artificial intelligence software for educational purposes so that everybody understands a good process and can see a good process to understanding what the markets are expected to do. Now, if you don't have the VantagePoint software, you can still do this process with whatever tools you use, because getting the overall market overview, knowing what the Dow, the S&P, the Nasdaq, the Russell, oil, gold, knowing what those markets are doing can certainly help you if you're an options trader, a stock trader, a currency trader, maybe you're a futures trader. It gives you a lot of insight and information, and that's what we're doing here today. So let's take it a step further. Here's light sweet crude oil. The question a lot of people have is, are crude oil prices expected to fall? Well, if you didn't see this already, VantagePoint indicated a reversal in crude oil on August 15th. Do we have any crude oil traders here? Either maybe you're doing USO as an ETF or something like that, but are there any crude oil traders or oil traders, oil and gas traders here in today's session? And the reason I'm asking that question is because it's very clear that there was a big bullish trend forecasted in crude oil. And you can see it was forecasted back here from the artificial intelligence and VantagePoint. That trend had some major momentum and it was moving very strong for the beginning. Then it flattened out and consolidated a little bit, but that blue line never crossed below. Hey, William, good. That blue line never crossed below, saying that this trend is expected to reverse. This is the consolidation that I was kind of talking about with the ES, and this is the consolidation I was talking about on the Nasdaq, where consolidation in a down or an up trend is simply that, consolidation. And if you have the right tools and information and you're doing your analysis, you can identify when that consolidation is then turns bullishly or bearishly. In this case, you can see the blue line was going sideways across the screen, and then it got this major positive slope to it right here on this day. Well, that positive slope matches up with the fact that the neural index was green, and the predictive differences also have that positive slope, that turn up. So I've got everything saying that it's coming out of consolidation right here, and then look what happens over the next 3 days, an acceleration in that bullish trend. The difference is when the consolidation happens up here at the top, I see a strong negative slope right here on this day to the point that it crosses through. That negative slope is a prediction in that trend. And here's one thing I want to call out. The blue line's a predicted moving average. That negative slope started right about here. Check out the simple moving average. This is what a lot of people are using in their platforms today. That simple moving average was still going up. So that lagging indicator was still going up when the VantagePoint predictive indicator had already turned down. Again, reading an oscillator is very powerful, but when you use a crossover like this, it's undeniable that on August 15th, VantagePoint was indicating bearishness. The neural index indicating bearishness. Predictive differences had crossed to the downside and had moved lower. Everything at this point, these are, by the way, what we call the 4 points of confirmation. Every VantagePoint user gets these 4 points of confirmation right out of the box, right? Now the question, now that we know that what indicated that crossover, let's see how, for you crude oil traders, let's see how powerful that trend prediction was. There you go. Look at that. 10,000 hypothetical gains in one contract in that 31-day period. Right? Got a clear crossover the downside right there on 8:15. Hey, Anna. Anna, you gave me a great emoji there. I get that face often. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. It's that surprise face, like, wow, it saw that. Because, and maybe that's not what you were saying, but that's how I'm taking it, because look what happened the next day. Crossed to the downside and things just absolutely peeled off. 2%, over 2% loss that next day. It could have been avoided or shorted, right? For those of you that trade USO, buy put, that like to buy puts, you can see where VantagePoint was indicating that there was an opportunity there. And then today, let's talk about today. Let's talk about right now on USO. Look at the range on this candle. Regardless of the range on the candle, I want to highlight something for you. This is saying bearishness. Why? This is red. The candle is red, saying we're expecting lower highs and lower lows. For those of you that like to trade oil, this came out at 6:30 last night. Tell me, are we seeing lower highs and lower lows? VantagePoint is indicating overall bearishness in that trend. Okay, there's overall bearishness in that trend, but take a look at this. We got some short-term strength in that trend. So overall, we're expecting lower highs and lower lows. We're expecting overall bearish trend movements, but nothing that's going to be a rout or a bloodbath today because we've got some short-term strength going on there. The predictive differences, the predicted momentum indicators, the 3-day is bearish. We can see the 2-day is bearish and the 1-day is consolidated. So again, there is overall bearishness in your trend prediction from the artificial intelligence. And it's just not expected to be drastic or dramatic. So lower prices today expected. Remember, you had this at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time last night. Barring any wild announcement or news or information like that comes out, VantagePoint was indicating some bearishness. Hey, Ed, I knew I had seen that face before. Anna said, no, you're right. You took the words right out of my mouth. I'm amazed. I have seen that face before, and that's usually when you're looking at these predictions going, holy cow, if I, would I, should I, could I? Yeah, and the answer is, yeah, it's possible. For Anna, for anybody else that has some questions, maybe you want to dig in one-on-one and you don't want to do it in the chat, go to VantagePointForecast.com. And we'd be happy to chat with you one-on-one if you want to. All right, let's go put on our verified support and resistance. Now, again, these aren't the default indicators. What I'm adding now are some added indicators that if somebody understands and likes to use support and resistance, there's very powerful ones in the VantagePoint software. And you can see that there is a support level right down here. There was one here that got broken and beat, but there is a support level right here at 78. Call it 78.60 to make it easy. Well, there's a lot of room between that support level and the close price of yesterday. So there's plenty of room for prices to continue falling. What we've got to go check out is whether or not momentum is expected to continue pushing prices lower down to that support level. Because if we've got room between the close and that support level, if we've got room between there, then something's got to push it down there, not just news. The global markets. The global markets are going to push it down there. What's happening in the dollar, the euro, the yen, heck, Bitcoin, oil production, Fed announcements, the Treasury yield being the highest it's been in over a decade. All of that stuff is going to have an impact. The strength of the dollar, we haven't gotten there yet, but you get my point. All of that is going to have an impact on what's going on in light sweet crude oil, and these indicators are analyzing all of that. So what we're seeing is a support point down there. We're seeing some bearishness on predicted MACD, some bullishness on predicted stochastics. We're also seeing some RSI flattening out, if you will, consolidation on RSI. We're seeing percent R flatten out. It popped out of the oversold territory here and then flattened back out again. So consolidation there. So again, we've got room from the close to that support point, and we can expect light sweet crude oil to hang out right in there because there's not enough momentum to push it past that support point into that first verified support zone. Heck, there's not even enough momentum to push it past this old support point that stays on the chart. See it? There's a support point right here that's on the chart. It got broken recently. It's trying to be retested right now. It's at 79.36. It's going to be difficult with the fact that momentum is not overly bearish for prices on light sweet crude oil to break that old support point at 79.36 today. That was available last night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. I could see that that's the case. You could even see a potential predicted high of $80.83 in light sweet crude oil. That means it's got a very small range that it's expecting to play in today, maybe 50 cents, right? So, that's a valuable piece of information for those of you that like to trade light sweet crude oil and understand, what's expected. I alluded to strength in the dollar. Here's the dollar forecast. The dollar forecast indicated clearly bullishness back on 721. And no, VantagePoint is powerful, but you're not going to catch every bottom and every top. I've never said that, and hopefully you're not thinking that, but you can see from where that forecast was to where prices closed right here on this day, right? Yesterday. Let's see where that went. 2.6% increase in 22 trading days. $1 contract produced over $2,000 in hypothetical gains. But what does it say now about the dollar? Because that's one of the things that, a lot of people will say is like, okay, so great, you showed me a great forecast, but what's it forecasting for today and tomorrow? Well, look, it's on the screen. That's exactly what we've been going through in today's session, is understanding the right side of the screen, which is designed to tell you the 1, 2, and 3 day forecast. Do the indicators draw out into 1, 2, and 3? No, they don't. The artificial intelligence is generating the predicted typical price for the 1 day, which is today, tomorrow, and the next day, and then using those prices to create these predictive indicators, basically making them forward-looking indicators. All right. So what it's saying about the dollar is short-term strength. You see a predicted high here up to 103.40. That 103.40 is what VantagePoint's predicting for the high. I think right now the high went up to 103.62. So you can see it went even higher than VantagePoint predicted. So that bullish trend generated some more gains there. Are we seeing things flatten for the dollar? Yeah, of course. You can see it. Look, let's put on our verified support and resistance. There you go. It's getting into that resistance zone. Here is that old resistance level that was broken and beat, and you can see that it's keeping prices around right at that level. We've got a high up here at 103.56. That information is valuable information to have. If we take a look at where we could see the dollar, it would be right in between those. The high of the last 72 hours is good information to have. We've got our old resistance point here that was tagged 103, what did I say it was? 103.25 roughly, you know, you get my point. Overall, still bullishness expected. Not a ton of bullishness. Why? Weakness in the neural index. Momentum certainly shifting off of the high side and creating lower highs. This is a momentum shift, folks. This is bearish momentum on all of these momentum indicators right now on the US dollar. So as the dollar tries to push higher, what is momentum trying to do? Push it lower, right? So we've got a battle going on with the dollar. Still overall bullish, but a battle nonetheless, saying that there is a lot of downward bearish pressure on the dollar right now. And you know, based on what's happening this week and what's going to happen on Friday with the Feds, that's information that everybody should be aware of, because there's a lot of bearish pressure on the dollar, and we can see it very clearly right here on the chart. Matter of fact, if I go to the short-term crossover, you'll see, oh, it's already crossed to the downside. So there's certainly bearish in the short-term trend. The long-term trend is flattening out, so a lot of consolidation and bearishness so far with the dollar. Not indicating an overall 2 or 3 day trend reversal. The 1 day, yes, but the 2 or 3 day has not crossed to the downside yet. Looking at some of the basic momentum indicators that we've been talking about, here we go. Let's take a look and see if we see the same thing. Consolidation on our predicted MACD, bearishness on our predicted stochastic, consolidation on our predicted RSI, and consolidation on our predicted percent R. So not overall all bearish momentum, but certainly a lot of it. And what I'm able to do is now walk away knowing what, you know, is going on from a dollar standpoint. I can walk away from the dollar saying, hey, there is bearishness on the horizon. There's enough bearishness on the horizon that I can take my money and run if I wanted to, right? From a hypothetical trade standpoint, you can see that. Gold traders. If we have any gold traders here in the room, if we got gold traders in the room, let's take a look at gold. Let's go pull up the recent gold contract, right? There you go. GCZ 23, and there you go. Here's a short term on gold, what we're expecting from gold. We had a cross to the upside short term, so some short term strength. Our predicted high and predicted low, expecting higher prices, short term strength here. From the beginning of this trend to now, we're seeing bullishness here. We're seeing consolidation here and bearishness here. So there is definitely a shift on gold. The dollar is kind of rounding out like this, and gold is rounding out like this. If I put those two side by side, you'd see an interesting picture. Here, let me zoom in. There we go. Zoom in 2 months there, 2 months here. I'm going to go add all of the same indicators, just to show you what I'm looking at here. I'm going to slide this up. I'm going to make these look identical. But the interesting thing about this is that gold and the dollar tend to have an inverse relationship at different parts of the year. The artificial intelligence knows that. And you can see that the dollar is rounding out up here and gold is rounding out down here. It doesn't mean that the trend is expected to reverse right now. It means that there is, for gold, weakness in that bearish trend, or strength where it could turn bullishly, and for the dollar the other way around. And that's valuable information for somebody trying to understand. Look, take a look. Here's gold again. Things are trying to turn bullishly. Here's a dollar where things are trying to turn bearishly. It's happening at the same time in two markets that have an inverse relationship. We all know that there's real-time market correlations out there. This is taking correlation analysis to a whole nother level by looking at intermarket analysis with artificial intelligence. But what we can see is shifting happening in both of these assets. All right, good. Well, that was definitely a deep dive and some analysis. You know, I always love giving you the view from my analysis. Let's take a look at some stocks here. Let's take a look at some stocks that you might be interested in taking a look at. For instance, somebody was asking about, you know, a trend or what's going up. I think that was one of the questions earlier. I could tell you something that came out of a scan recently, because there is the ability to scan in the VantagePoint software, and that would be Northrop Grumman, NOC. This is a stock that had a fresh crossover. When I say a fresh crossover, let me show you what I mean. Look right here. There you go. Right here on the right-hand side. That crossover, the blue line was below, it rounded out. The gray line is still going down because that's a lagging simple moving average. The blue line is a predicted moving average. It started turning up a few days ago. This is the 2-day prediction on the trend. If I go back to the 1-day prediction, this thing crossed over a couple of days ago. So NOC had a bullish forecast starting back on 8/17. That bullish forecast was saying, hey, this stock has some strength in it. Go take a look at the momentum shift. You want to talk about momentum rounding out. At the same time I got that crossover, we had these lines sloping to the bullish side. So all the analysis that we just did and talked about as a group is bringing us to the point that we can say there is bullishness in Northrop. There's a clear bullishness expected. If I go to my long-term crossover, I can see that there's consolidation from a 3-day trend forecast. So the forecast is the next 1 or 2 days has some bullishness. 3 days is shifting from bearish to bullishness and has some consolidation. My neural index is green. My predicted high is higher. My predicted low is higher. If you're using predictive information like this in VantagePoint, you can really draw some quick conclusions by analyzing each indicator step by step, one by one. Here's verified support and resistance. Notice this. Here's the close. There are no resistance points from where it closed yesterday all the way up to this point at the top of this trend, which is, let's see, this candle high here is 459.82. 459.82, there is nothing, I'll say it again, there's nothing slowing it down. So if we can get bullish volume and bullish momentum, if there's some seasonal impact here, there's several levels of analysis that can help you understand if there is overall bullishness here. And what I like to do in this software that I use in VantagePoint is walk through each one of those. Momentum, right? I can take a look at the momentum indicators. I can look at, let's use predicted MACD, stochastics. I missed predicted RSI. Look, this is what I'm talking about. If I go back to that medium-term crossover, which is kind of my default indicator, I'm looking right here to see if I've got bullishness, because this is how long since the trend prediction. Bullishness, bullishness, bullishness. These are all predictive indicators. You've got a fresh bullish crossover on MACD. Bullishness, bullishness, bullishness. I can keep on going through indicators. Heck, some of you may like to use things like predicted Fibonacci or Fibonacci. Maybe you like seasonal indicators. Regardless of what you like to utilize, by putting them on the chart and understanding whether or not the predictive indicators of the artificial intelligence is more bullish than bearish, there's tons of value in that. Here you go. Here's the triple cross. The triple cross has turned from red to green, saying that there is a shift on that. That T-cross long, that navy blue line is sitting right there at 435.82, which means if I'm expecting some bullishness in NOC, right? How much am I expecting? Well, if it gets above 435.82, then I can certainly expect it to continue pushing higher. That's the only level of resistance that could do anything right now. And we've already got a predicted high expected to be higher than that. Heck, VantagePoint is saying that this thing from a predicted high and low standpoint could go up to 437.52. 437.52. Where is NOC? Let me see if I can pull it up. Northrop, here we go. The high today on Northrop is 437.19. So it's literally 437.19 is literally right around there. You get the point. That's where the high is right now today. It's up. It's above that predicted triple cross line. So to answer the question that somebody threw into the chat a little while ago, what's going up? I think you see it on the screen. There's some bullishness right there on NOC from the VantagePoint predictive indicators. Can I layer on other indicators? Absolutely. I've got the full suite of VantagePoint indicators. Look, I've been utilizing this artificial intelligence for nearly 12 years now. Got over 25 years experience in the markets. I personally haven't found anything better to do analysis, and I haven't found anything that creates predictive information. If you haven't, by the way, already subscribed to our channel, our VantagePoint AI YouTube channel, subscribe and go check out the other live videos, because what VantagePoint is doing and how this software is doing its analysis is different than anything you've ever seen in the world. It's got 2 patents on it. We were awarded 2 patents on this technology. It utilizes the global market relationships and the interactions from assets all over the world and how they're influencing what you're trying to trade to identify trends like this with predictive indicators. So if you've got it, I'm glad you're part of the VantagePoint family. If you don't got it, then what are you waiting for, right? All right, let's take a look. Yeah, there you go. It did. I see Steve and Gene put in, is that a ticker you want to take a look at? Let's see if it's in here. HUMFT, I don't know what that is. HUMFT. Okay, maybe it's not a ticker. Yep, several people have asked for NVIDIA. Everybody wants to know where NVIDIA is expected to go. Remember, NVIDIA has earnings coming out after the market closed tomorrow. VantagePoint forecasted bullishness in NVIDIA 818 with a confirmed bullish crossover 819. But understand one thing, earnings are expected on NVIDIA, right? With earnings being expected on NVIDIA, it is anybody's game at this point. This earnings is coming out after the market closes tomorrow, so the data download for tonight will help us understand more about earnings. But VantagePoint is saying that there's overall bullishness around earnings based on how I read our earnings indicator. That earnings indicator is about 72% accurate around earnings on NVIDIA specifically, right? And it's saying there's overall bullishness. Earnings, I could do verified support and resistance. I can walk through all my indicators, but let's be real. What's happening right now with NVIDIA over the next few days is due to a fundamental event called earnings. VantagePoint is indicating overall bullishness, but until they report their earnings, and you can see that the estimate is $1.69. When they report their earnings, that could make the markets do anything based on sentiment. The AI sentiment here is bullish, but trader sentiment, investor sentiment, that changes depending on the report. Maybe they beat earnings, but they don't beat revenue, right? Who knows? We have to wait for that earnings call, but overall we're seeing more bullishness than anything. Hopefully that helps you understand it. Coin, here we go. Lonnie's asking for coin. Lonnie, question, is this a stock you're holding? Is this something that you've got? Just want to kind of get a feel for what you're looking at coin for, or what you're looking at about coin, because there was a very clear bearish crossover on coin right here in the middle of the screen. Hopefully you saw that somewhere, somehow, and you either took advantage of that to the short side, or at least protected your downside. I was talking about money management when we started this session, right? Money management, risk management is key to being successful from a trading standpoint. Lonnie, hopefully you saw something happen there. When you see this, you can see that there's a clear bearishness happening, right? You can see that the neural index had bearishness going on right here, right? You can see that the predictive differences were coming off of highs and pushing lower. So certain bearishness, absolutely, from back on 725, and it's maintained that all month long. So the question is, hey, artificial intelligence and VantagePoint, what say you about coin right now? We'll take a look. The medium-term crossover is still below and pushing lower. The predicted high is expected to be higher, and the predicted low is expected to be lower. So we've got some consolidation going on. We've basically got an outside bar saying, things could be sideways. The neural index still has some weakness because it's red, and the predictive differences are bearish bearish, and bearish. So we've got some bearishness here, some bullishness from the predicted high, predicted low. Let's check out the short-term crossover. This is the one-day prediction of the trend. Consolidation going on with the short-term crossover, and the long-term still saying bearish. Triple cross level that we got to be concerned with. Way up here at 83, let's see, 82.94. You can call it 82.94. That's the level that I'm not even thinking about being bearish about coin, because the VantagePoint's long-term predicted moving average, for those of you that don't know, this is an 18-day predicted moving average that has 3 days of predictive information in the actual formula, this line right here. You want to talk about giving yourself some upper and lower control limits and verified support and resistance levels. There you go. It's also sitting almost at the same point that this old support point is at 82.09. It's almost sitting at the same point, which means there is a lot of resistance holding coin down. Call it right there at 82.83, right there. A lot of resistance, so we're going to need a lot of bullish momentum to push past that. And that's why using those different sets of indicators is very, very valuable. You're welcome, William. Thank you for being here. We can certainly look at some more of these. Let's look. Forex, can you show Euro USD? Sure, Euro USD. There's the Euro USD, and you can see from a medium term, a 2-day prediction standpoint, still overall bearish. Heck, there's a couple of really powerful trends. I like to use the short-term crossover on Forex. One of the largest markets out there being traded, and you can see there's some really, really quick moves. Look, this is the Euro USD forecast. And when you look at this, you can see that there was a really powerful bearish trend happening right here, forecasted to the downside. From there until the close yesterday, this is the extent of the latest bearish trend. One lot could have produced about 650 euro, right? But more importantly, look what VantagePoint said about the Euro USD last night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Fresh crossover, neural index, predicted differences higher, predicted high higher, predicted low higher. So not everything is screaming to the upside, right? Hopefully you can see that and understand that. But what VantagePoint is saying is that there could be some short-term bullishness in this trend, but long-term 2-day bearishness expected. 3-day, look at the 3-day, wow. This has been bearish since back here and still bearish at this point. If I go from the beginning of that trend till now, I'm getting some bullishness, some consolidation in some of those momentum indicators. But with what we know what's happening with the dollar, don't forget what we were talking about earlier when you think about the dollar. If we go back to the dollar forecast and what's going on with gold, gold was dropping, the dollar was rising, but rounding out. Well, that's going to have an impact on the Euro USD, which means if the dollar starts to fall, the Euro USD will start to climb. Well, we see some weakness in the dollar, but it's not falling at this point. So we're not going to see the Euro USD climb just yet because there is a correlation between those markets. So consolidation to bearishness on what we're seeing on the Euro USD. And you can see there's the support and resistance levels that will keep it between this range, right? 928 down to 835 is a realistic range because it's getting into a channel and it's going to work its way through this channel because there isn't really momentum expected one way or another. Look, let me show you what I mean. MACD, RSI, stochastic, percentile are all predicted momentum and all going sideways, right? Look at this. For the last couple of weeks, you're seeing they're almost in the same exact spot as they were. A little bearishness on MACD, but this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days is 2 weeks, and those indicators are basically in the same spot. So certainly some channel going on with the Euro USD with a little tinge of bearishness based on what I'm seeing in the VantagePoint software, right? Who was asking for that? Lord of the Musics. Hopefully that was helpful for you, right? Tesla, yeah, there was a great reversal on Tesla. Hopefully you were able to take advantage of that reversal on Tesla to the downside And now you're probably asking because you want to know if it's time to take a look at things from a bullish standpoint, right? All right, let's take a look. Well, here's the bearish move on Tesla. You can see that that's the case. Let's just walk through the analysis that we went through as a group today, all right? Let's walk through it step by step. We can see that there's bearishness going on, right? With a short-term bullish pop here, right? We can see that the neural index was red and it turned green. You see that? It was red and it turned green, saying that there is some short-term bullishness in the strength. We're predicting a high. The software is predicting a high of around 234.31, right? Look, in case anybody's wondering what I'm looking at, there's the predicted high, there's the predicted low, 234.31, right? That's what VantagePoint is forecasting from a high for Tesla's standpoint. I think the high went up to 240.82 or something like that. So it gapped up and it's since retreated off of that gap to right within that gray bar. Oops. So what I've got to understand by looking at this is that the overall medium-term two-day trend is still expected to be down. But last night at 6:30, I would have seen this short-term crossover with everything turning up from a one-day forecast standpoint saying, hey, there's some bullishness in the next day. Is it sustained or expected to be sustained long-term? Not yet. VantagePoint is indicating some consolidation, but from a long-term standpoint, overall bearishness. This is a three-day forecast. The triple cross level that we've got to be concerned about is 243.02, which means that 243.02, I'm not even thinking bullishly about Tesla until I see prices above 243.02 at this point. Close prices above 243.02 tell me that the VantagePoint predictive indicators are saying, okay, now we are seeing things more bullishly long term. Doesn't mean there's not some quick short term swing trades or day trades to be had with Tesla, but long term, we're not expecting overall bullishness just yet. Remember, there's always going to be up days and down trends and vice versa. And just because you don't take advantage of gains on one day doesn't mean that there aren't major gains to take advantage of when your indicators do line up and providing you good information. So I just realized based on the messages coming through that I've gone over an hour. I try to keep this session to an hour, but if you can't tell, this is something that we see is very valuable here at VantagePoint AI, helping you understand the indicators, understand the markets. If you've got questions and you want to ask one-on-one, if you're a VantagePoint family member and you're utilizing the software, reach out to us in the VantagePoint University. That's the education piece. Or you can call customer support, of course, or you can put a message into the chat to just say, call me. We'll be happy to reach out to you. If you are not currently utilizing the VantagePoint software and maybe I didn't get to your question or didn't get to dig into what you were wanting to dig into, go to VantagePointForecast.com. We can do it one-on-one. We're here to help. At the end of the day, our goal is to empower traders daily, empower everybody as much as we can. We've been doing nothing but helping traders like you since 1991, utilizing artificial intelligence. There is not another organization, another software, another company in this space that has that credibility and longevity. And I'm glad you were here to take advantage of today's analysis. And always glad to be a help. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. But for now, I'm going to sign off the live and say thank you for being here and thank you for letting me give you the view from my vantage point. Everybody have a good day.